Welcome to SoulPod Studio. We're not your average social network. We're a community of professionals, enthusiasts, and students taking sustainability to the next level. Join us on our journey and get inspired by Earth heroes just like you. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to SoulPod Studio. Today, I'm here with Madeline Longoria Garcia, whose passion and profession is coffee education. Madeline works at Pacific Coffee Research on the Big Island of Hawaii, where I'm also from, but her passion for coffee started long before that. I'm so excited for you guys to meet her and hear her amazing story. Thank you so much, Madeline, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm just going to go ahead and hop in. I was hoping you could just tell us a little bit about you and your background and your story and what kind of got you inspired to go on this path.
So, I have worked in coffee since 2010 and really just started as a barista in a cafe. It was my college job. Didn't really expect it to go anywhere after college. But since then, I've had some amazing opportunities to be a part of almost every part of the entire coffee supply chain in the industry. That means working in cafes as a barista, as a manager, as a barista trainer and educator. Specifically here in Hawaii, I moved here to learn more about the agricultural side. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about where coffee was coming from before it got to my hands in a cafe or even in a roastery. During that time too, I was really just curious about coffee and wanting to explore as many opportunities as I could as they presented themselves to me. And so I first moved to Hawaii in 2014. Have lived on and off the island several times. And so first moved here for a short period of time, was working on a farm, processing coffee, harvesting coffee, and was actually also working at a cafe at the same time as a barista, which was really cool. Did that for about 9 months and then moved to Australia and worked in cafes there. And that was, again, really driven by this curiosity about the coffee industry and really wanting to learn more. And I think like push myself a little bit more too. Found myself on coffee farms in Southeast Asia after that, and then made my way back to Hawaii after a while. Worked in coffee here, was brokering coffee, buying coffee, sample roasting and tasting, all of these things from a lot of farms. And then decided to go work on a farm in Central America. And so was, working with a couple of coffee growers in Central America, and then kept finding myself being pulled back to Hawaii.
Wow, that's incredible. I am just curious, what would you say the biggest difference you've noticed in the coffee industry across all the different places you've traveled? What would that be?
Oh God. So I feel like there's definitely a lot more similarities than we would expect, right? Like across so many different cultures and languages and just like countries, national borders, all of these things. There's a lot of similarities. And I think when we're looking at places that have really strong consuming cultures, so strong like cafe cultures and coffee shop scenes and stuff like that, the service and what the typical traditional service is, I would say varies quite a bit. Europe, you sit at this tiny little table in a plaza outside of this cafe and get like your espresso or your macchiato or something. In the United States, I feel like what is so common in cafes here, there's two like opposing things. You're either in and out really fast, so it's kind of like this grab and go culture where you're just trying to get your coffee for the morning and get out the door as quickly as possible, or people are like camping out and working in cafes. In Australia, what I see a lot for them, coffee is like a break in their day. It is not the thing that they're rushing to get to start their day. It is, okay, I've already gone to my office. At least this is, the cafes where I worked. People had already gone to their office, maybe set their things down, started their day, and now they're coming to the cafe across the street with their coworkers, and they're going to sit down for like 10 minutes and enjoy their coffees together. and then continue on with their day. Or it's like a whole meal around coffee, right? It's not just in and out grabbing your coffee. It is, I'm sitting down and having my breakfast or having my lunch and enjoying this whole service experience. And ever since experienced that specifically, like in Australia, it drives me crazy, our cafe culture in the United States, how we just, for some reason, can't seem to chill out for like 10 minutes. That's like a huge thing that I noticed from, yeah, the service perspective and the barista side of things.
And I would love to hear how you maybe brought that appreciation with you back to the States in general, through Pacific Coffee Research. What brought you to Pacific Coffee Research?
Throughout all of the different roles I have had in coffee, and especially looking at when I was involved with cafes, there was always this thread of learning. And I mean, learning for me on farms too, in all sorts of different roles, where I was always curious and wanting to learn more. And specifically on the cafe side, was I would always end up kind of being put in these positions of being the trainer or the educator for new hires. And so that seems to really be this common thread throughout all these roles, whether it's an opportunity for me to learn or an opportunity for me to teach someone else. And so in Pacific Coffee Research, really one of the main tenets of what we do is education, and education in the coffee industry, whether it is for folks who are coffee professionals who already have, established careers in coffee, or folks who are trying to learn something because they want to start working in coffee, or people who just love coffee and they want to learn something more. And so that is definitely, one of that was the big thing that brought me to Pacific Coffee Research, that made me want to be a part of this thing, especially because previous to us, those services and those educational opportunities just didn't really exist in Hawaii. How I maybe bring these other perspectives to the work we do is trying to maybe like express and impart this appreciation for coffee as something that is not just like a commodity, something that is not just a caffeine source, but through education and sharing information of what is happening to that coffee before it gets to our hands, hopefully gives people a deeper appreciation for it. If they have an understanding of, okay, this didn't just come from the coffee roaster down the street from me, or the next city over. They also had to import it from someone else, or they had to purchase it from an importer who imported it from an exporter in some other country, who also like compiled this big container of coffee together from, I don't know, 100 different farms, and all of the, just like all of the hands and the steps that it takes. I just feel like if more people understood what went into their cup of coffee in the morning, they would appreciate it more, and they would maybe be encouraged to just like savor it a little bit more instead of drinking it down really quickly for their caffeine hit in the morning. But like, let me enjoy this. Let me think about what this tastes like, and have a little bit of gratitude for all of the things that had to magically work out well for this to get here.
I love that, and making it a
Mhm.
more mindful practice. I do notice that that's something that's really lacking, especially where I'm living now in LA. I mean, it feels like just a method for
Mhm.
people to get their caffeine hit. And while there are a lot of really cool cafes, I didn't know anything about the
Mhm.
coffee industry until
Mhm.
really learning from you. I know that you have some specific coffee certifications, and I was wondering if you could kind of explain those a little bit and what goes into those.
So I have a certification that's called a Q Arabica grader license. That is from an organization called the Coffee Quality Institute. They're a global organization that also focuses on education And what this specific certificate is for is essentially qualified coffee tasters. We have licenses to taste coffee and evaluate them on quality. And so it's like a 6 day long course, but even before that, most people prep or they have quite a bit of experience in coffee, with a wide range of coffees, tasting them. And a lot of that really comes to, yeah, having a mindful approach when you're tasting coffees and when you're drinking them. So you're not just, oh, this one's good. Oh, that one's not that great. You're evaluating each coffee in 10 different categories. And you have to come to that table in the right mindset. I'm not just drinking this. I'm not just like mindlessly sipping on these coffees. I am going to think about, like, what does this smell like? What do the dry grounds smell like? What do the wet grounds smell like? What does it feel like in my mouth? What does the texture feel like? Is it silky? Is it syrupy? Is it drying? What is the acidity like? Is this coffee balanced? Is it sweet? Like, in general, what is the whole experience? And I think this is something maybe we don't talk about enough in coffee, but you kind of create a whole meditation around tasting coffees. It is quiet in the room when you're doing this with other people. You're not talking to other people about what you're experiencing. You're just slurping the coffee and writing your notes down and then going to the next one and doing the exact same thing. So it requires attention and focus, and yeah, just being mindful of what is occurring. Like, how is your body responding to this coffee? It's really interesting. A lot of people like to compare it to being like a sommelier of coffee, which is not really accurate, but it's kind of the most tangible thing, I think, for other folks who don't work in coffee to understand what goes into this certificate program. And so I've had that license since 2017. I'm officially an assistant instructor for this program as well. The reason why I'm doing it is because we don't have instructors for this program in Hawaii, and so anybody who lives here either has to travel, and that costs a lot of time and money, or a company, an entity has to invite an instructor out here, which also costs a lot of money. The goal is to make that course more accessible to folks here in Hawaii by having somebody here who can teach it. That was kind of like a general overview of that. But yeah, it's like a 6 day long course. There's like 24 exams. You have to pass every single one to get your license. And so, yeah, it's a whole thing.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. I love that it's making it more accessible for people in Hawaii, and I know that that's what you guys focus on so much
Mhm.
at PCR.
Mhm.
And I was also hoping we could transition a little bit to the sustainability side of
Mhm.
coffee.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to know a little more about how does sustainability play into the coffee trade in general? What are the most sustainable parts? What would you say are the least or the least ethical? What do you hope to see change in the future? Anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, this is a big topic in coffee, and you can go in so many different directions with it, right? And when we talk about sustainability, we really think about it in the holistic view, the three main pillars, whether it's economic, social, or environmental, and how all three of those play into coffee. Um, Really, like, environmentally, probably the like worst part of coffee trade is the international trade of coffee, right? The carbon footprint of shipping coffee literally all around the world every single day, over and over and over again. Um, this is what we see with any commodity that we are purchasing, where our rice is coming from, where our beans are coming from, corn, etc. Right? And so one of the things that we look at, and this is actually, a project that we really need to dive into in the next year or so at Pacific Coffee Research, is like, what is the carbon footprint of like us selling coffee, right? So we work with local farms and we work with foreign farms. So we purchase coffee internationally and locally. Now, when we look at the delivery of these coffees, right? So for the international coffees that we import from a importer that's based on the mainland. They have a warehouse on the west coast um, that gets shipped via freight to Hawaii. It has to actually, before it leaves the port there, it has to be fumigated. That is by law, it has to be fumigated before it leaves the port on the West Coast. Comes to Hawaii on a huge barge ship, goes to Oahu first. Then it gets released from Oahu to Hawaii Island. It's inspected on Hawaii Island, and then it gets trucked from the port in the northern part of the island to our facility. So even not even looking at where the coffee is actually coming from on the individual farms, just the importing from the mainland to Hawaii, like that's a pretty big carbon footprint there. Now let's compare that to the coffee that we buy from growers on Hawaii Island. Um, they are either doing their Costco run in town and they have their 200 to 300 pounds of coffee in their truck and they stop off at our facility before they do their Costco run and drop off their coffee at our front door, basically. Or they meet us somewhere in town as they're running errands, or they come to my house or my business partner's house while they're somewhere else, and so it's like it's literally just directly going from their hands, the growers, into ours, no matter which way however we end up getting it to our roastery and to our facility. But obviously, a much lower impact there environmentally, and when we're looking at sustainability in the environment, like that is a massive difference there in how we receive coffees from around the world or from this island. Um, Environmentally too, there's farm level stuff and there's so much that people can dive into with that. Um, I do want to say, most most farms outside of like some massive ones, mostly in like Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia, because they're the top three coffee producing nations of the world. Most farms are like very small. Okay, and so I know a lot of the time we see this information about some like huge deforestation happening for coffee farms. That's not typically happening. Most of that is either old land, like there isn't a lot of new deforestation that's happening with coffee. That's kind of what I want to say. Like it's been that way for a long time, and I think a lot of farms, especially when we look at what we call specialty coffee, they are trying to diversify agriculturally versus maintaining only monocropping, only a monocropping system. Environmentally, so much more detail we can talk about. Social sustainability, this is where we find a lot of smoke and mirrors really on the production side because it's easy for us to not really have a lot of transparency and information about what's happening on the farm level. Um, there historically have been a lot of problems, especially with women's rights and women who are involved on coffee farms not being treated well, not having the same access as their male counterparts. Um, in a lot of countries around the world, women still can't own land outright without having a husband or a father, right, actually owning the land with them. There's a lot to dissect even there. And when we look at Hawaii and what Pacific Coffee Research does, we aim to have a positive impact in terms of like social sustainability by, again, creating better access to information and ensuring that the growers who we're working with have values that are in line with our own. There are so many ways that we can take that whole conversation too. But just trying to keep things a little bit brief and not going down too far into some rabbit holes. Just, we want to be working with people who are farming their land, who are actively participating in the process. We work with folks who care about the impact of the job on their employees, who also care about the impact of their work on the land. One of the coffees that we purchase regularly is from a farm called Aloha Star Coffee. They are not certified organic, but they practice organic growing methods. And for them, it's so important for their own health and the health of anybody who comes in contact with those plants, to have these environmentally sustainable practices. We've just had some great conversations with them about their business practices too, and their team, the whole environment of their farm and their business. Lastly, just kind of looking at like economic sustainability, one of the biggest things we see, and I think this is applicable in a lot of agriculture, is that many times farms are not being run as businesses, or they're not being treated as businesses, maybe not even by the owners themselves, but by the people who are trying to buy that product from them. That's a huge thing that I think that definitely needs to change, where the owners of these farms need to have better access to information that will help them make better financial decisions, and that will help them better understand the true value of their coffee based off of the costs and their inputs, then understanding, okay, that's the baseline value. Now I need to make a profit. And from the buyer's perspective, understanding that these are businesses, every farm is a business. Why are we okay with like negotiating on pricing that's not sustainable? Why are we okay with asking or demanding prices that are not sustainable, and we know they're not sustainable for most of these farms? One of our main practices at Pacific Coffee Research is like we don't negotiate with the farmers. Like we know they know their business best. There are times where we have reached out to a grower and we're like, hey, we're interested in your coffee. We really liked it when we tasted it at XYZ. What is your price? And sometimes we can't afford it, and that's fine. And we just tell them we can't do that at this time. We're not going to try to bring you down on your price at all. But like we can't afford that at this time. We will reach out if we know we have a market at that price point. For me, it feels better to say that and be just totally honest versus saying, I can actually get this coffee from this other farm at this price. So why are you charging this price for your coffee? When it's like, well, they know their business best. I'm not going to start asking them about their business practices. Or maybe very rarely does somebody come to me and ask me like, oh, well, you have this coffee from Ka'u at this price, but I also saw this other coffee from Ka'u at this price. Why is this different? From the get-go, they're very different products. We're buying from different farms. There's so many different factors that can go into this. How it's graded is differently. We're buying one grade, this other person's buying a different grade. Our packaging costs different amounts of money. The amount we pay our staff is different. Like all of these different things that go into it. Economically, coffee is in this weird place that the buyer, for some reason, has been historically given a lot of power to negotiate on prices and demand specific prices. And I want to see that flip. And it is pretty flipped in Hawaii, but globally it's not there yet. And I hope we get to a place where we have growers who feel more strong and confident in asking for the prices that they need to sell their coffees for.
And are there specific practices that consumers can do on their side, something they can look for a little bit easily, maybe when they're in the grocery store? I know that this information, if you're coming into it as a consumer, you might not be fully aware, which is why resources like PCR are so important. But do you have any tips for consumers on how to look for these kinds of things?
Totally. So my thing is like if there is more information and like more transparency being shared, there's probably less that somebody's trying to hide. I just think about being at the grocery store, right? And you see two coffees side by side. Maybe one is, 25% more expensive than the other. And you're just like, these are both from Guatemala. Why would I spend 25% more money on this one from Guatemala versus this other coffee from Guatemala? But the one bag literally just says Guatemala coffee, medium roast, and then the branding of whatever coffee company it came from. Where the other one says Huehuetenango, Guatemala. This is the name of the co-op or the farm. This is harvest year on there, or just other information about the farm itself. Here's a great example. I saw a coffee company. There's a roaster on the mainland. They would even put the name of the importing company that they purchased that coffee from on their bag. And I thought that was super cool. The fact that they had all of this information and even the name of the importer who they worked with to purchase that coffee, to me, it's like, oh, you're not trying to hide things from anybody, even your competitors, because now your competitor knows, oh, I really like this coffee. Oh, they got it from this importer. I'm going to call that importer up and see if I can buy that coffee too. That level of information sharing to me shows good business practices and also not like a fear of competition too. Yeah, that's always the thing for me is if there's more information on the bag that you can even just like Google the name of this co-op or look up the name of this farm and get more information on, I think that is a really good indicator of better business practices. Still not might not be the best, but to me it's at least the first sign of like, okay, we're sharing information. This company is sharing information and they're not trying to hide anything from the consumer.
That's really helpful. Thank you. That's good to know. The
Mhm.
more detail, the better. I'm definitely going to do
Mhm.
that the next time I'm coffee shopping.
Well, and I think so. One other thing, I think a lot of people also default to like looking for certifications, like fair trade certified or organic certified, and I think those are great programs, but it is
Right.
it's still not telling the full story. There are still like fair trade certified coffees that are sold for prices that are not sustainable, right? That are maybe, and there are like organically certified farms that maybe haven't been checked by a certifying body in 5 years. And you actually don't know, they've been paying their certification fee, but you don't know when was the last time a certifier was actually out there looking at anything on the farm. I like certifications to an extent. And to me, it's not the end all be all just because it has that stamp on the bag. So that's something else I kind of wanted to say and share there.
That's really good to know. I remember you mentioning when we spoke before that certain farms may just pay a fee, a higher fee and get that certification when maybe that doesn't mean as much as just authentic transparency. And I also just wanted to ask you a little bit more about PCR and your journey with them before we wrap up. What do you feel most proud of that you've seen your company grow, or what's the milestone you guys have hit recently that you feel the most proud of at PCR?
So we were recently awarded a Good Food Award for actually two of our coffees. And if folks don't know what the Good Food Awards are, they are it's this national program where US products, so whether it's coffee or jams or ciders or beers, all of these different like consumable products, you enter your product into this competition and it is evaluated on quality, so taste quality, but also quality of business. what are your business practices? It was like a 6 month long application process. It was pretty intense. They ask a lot of questions. For the two coffees that we entered, they're both Hawaii Island coffees. One is from Kona, one is from Ka'u. We had phone calls with the farmers because we were like, they're asking us all of these questions that like we've never even asked you, that we probably should have asked you, but like now we're going to ask you all of these things. It was an opportunity to learn more about these coffees and the farmers themselves. It was really cool that both of the coffees we entered were awarded medals in the Good Food Awards. It's the first time that a Hawaii-based coffee roaster has won in the coffee category, and it's only the second time that a Kona coffee has ever been awarded, and the first time that a Ka'u coffee has been awarded. And so it was like a really cool thing, very like proud moment for us, because it just ties into us wanting to we want to elevate Hawaii coffee in general. We want to participate in doing that. And so seeing this national recognition for that is really cool for us and for these growers and for Hawaii coffee in general. We're very excited about that. And it's been fun to see that all happen.
Well, congratulations. That's so exciting. And I'm excited to see how PCR continues to grow. And anyone who is interested in learning more about coffee, you have to check out pacificcoffeeresearch.com. We'll have everything linked below. And before we finish, we have one final question to ask you, Madeline, that we ask all of our guests, which is, if you could have one sustainability superpower in this world, what would it be and why?
Oh gosh, making everything compostable, like actually like garden compostable, not industrially, but like garden compostable. Like that would be awesome if everything could actually just be like garden compostable.
That's a good one. Well, thank you again so much, Madeline. It's been so great chatting with you, and I learned so much from you. It's been truly a pleasure.
Oh yeah, it's been great chatting with you too.
SoulPod Studio is made possible by listeners like you. Join the free SoulPods platform to become a part of our virtual community of changemakers. Links to our social media, website, and platform can be found below in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to rate and review our podcast. Thank you for listening and for your support.